Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining in for SigNoz launch week. And today we have with Ankit, who is CTO and co-founder at SigNoz. Welcome, Ankit. How are you doing today?
Hello, Pranay. I'm good, doing good. Hello, everyone.
Cool. So we thought we'll just have a quick chat with Ankit to get an overall perspective of what are the things we have been working on around the features we have been developing and what we can expect from Signal's shipping in the coming few months. So, Ankit, why don't we start with a quick sort of overall theme of what we have been shipped in this current launch week? I think we have seen a few features coming, and then there will be a couple of more features which will be showcased. So, what's the overall theme here?
Sure, Pranay. For the last few months, we have been working a lot with many of our customers and open source community. So, what we have been doing a lot these last few months is uh, making our product easier to use, removing friction points from different parts of the product, so while getting dashboards, alerting, some confusions, better docs, and all these kinds of minor improvements, which eventually turn out to be great user experience improvements. We do have worked on those, and yet the coming few months we'll be working more and more towards those capabilities and things. Like eventually, we want to make it so simple and much easier to use SigNoz at all scales, starting from a small team, a few devs, to even large enterprises. Right. So that's one thing that we have been working on the last few months. Uh, like learning from our customers again, like we got to know like they wanted to have some control over the ingestion volume that they want to send. What actually happened is like even in open source systems and in our cloud, some customers start sending a lot of data suddenly during some hours, and maybe due to some bug in dev, if all the staging environments and production environments exist together. So they wanted some sort of control into the system, plus rotation of the ingestion keys, so that like they can revoke them anytime they want, and might be a security first feature, right? So we introduced that, and we support multiple ingestion keys with labels, different labels and tags with an expiration date. So that is according to me a great feature that customers would love, and we have already rolled it out to a few. Apart from that, a common theme that I saw in our product development was around insights, and it is like we started working on those pretty recently, because till now we have been building the basic building blocks of signals like logs, metrics, traces, and every pillars in place, and correlating correlations between the product started to work in. But now, for the first time, we started having more and more insights from the products. You'll see in the coming launch weeks a few features like history of alerts, what were the top five contributors, the timelines of the alert history, so that you can get better understanding of those alerts, what happened during those alerts were fired. Another example would be anomaly detection. Like that is a requirement from big companies that they do not want to change the thresholds of alerts, and they want some seasonality detection inbuilt, right? Like let's say every day 4 a.m. you have a spike of load due to some job running, and you'd not like to page your team that certain spike has happened, right? Your products, that exactly what anomaly detection does. It detects seasonality within days and weeks, and it tries to find out if there are real outliers or they have been past patterns. The third theme I would say would be around correlations, that we can talk about more if you want to. Like we are trying to build up more APM to logs and traces, and from logs to infrastructure metrics correlations and all of these sorts.
Yeah, I think as having a chat with different team members, I realized one common theme was around like setting the base layer for insights, as you mentioned. That hey, like till now we have focused just on showing the data which we have, which users are sending to us. But now, like this was the first time where we have started sort of building the building blocks of hey, like what does insight look like, And as I understand from you, this is the theme which will be continuing to build on. That hey, can we show better, more advanced, intelligent alerts to customers? Can we show uh, correlation across signals that you can go from metrics to traces, traces to logs, and be able to essentially resolve issues faster? And also around, hey, like what are the top contributors for an alert, right? So that's
Yeah.
pretty interesting to see. I think also I've seen, and this is just from my understanding from customers and like listening to our open source community, that the product has itself become much more robust. I think users are using at a huge scale now, and like it has really become a sort of enterprise grade product now with detailed features, good performance, etc. So, congrats on to you and the team on like working on that. I think one question I had was around what are the key things you are learning here, as you mentioned, like, and we keep talking to customers and our source community a lot. What are the key themes you are seeing? Are there any interesting areas which you are seeing come up a lot more? Are there any interesting use cases which are new to you and then you'd not have imagined and then it has come up now? So I would love some insights from you there.
Yeah. So before we go to that, I just sort of remembered something you told about earlier, like kudos to the team and all. So like here, specifically, the open source angles helps a lot. The community has been really helpful in showing and finding out different bugs and what improvements SigNoz can do in the product and all. So like, it's actually the win of a open source community also from SigNoz. So that, and yeah, regarding learning from our customers and use cases that we have been seeing, it's like a few of the I would say things that came to my mind was around uh, AI foundational models. So we have both type of customers using us. Uh, One who create the AI LLM foundational models, and the set of applications built on top of those models so that they are using internal AI models and all. So we have seen numerous of those companies using SigNoz. I was a bit amazed to see like SigNoz is a good fit for those kind of companies, and the basic functionalities that they need can be plotted out in the dashboards and all. And we have seen some companies posted out in Twitter also. So that was really actually exciting for me.
Yeah, I think for everybody, in fact, LLMs have been a great development and it has changed the way companies do their product development at least. And what was interesting was like a lot of these AI models companies or like LLM model companies are starting to use signals. Even companies which are building on top of LLM models are like choosing to use signals. And all these use cases are pretty like completely new, right? For example, 2 years back, all these use cases were not there. There was
Yeah.
no talk of like there was no LLM model to monitor, like there was no LLM apps to monitor. So this has been pretty interesting. And I think one of the reasons, and I'm just hypothesizing here, is that our users based pricing sort of suits these companies a lot because you're just sending like being charged for what you want and then you can just use it as it goes, right? uh,
Maybe like another thing that came to my mind is like these AI and LLM model companies, they might need the ability to host SigNoz
yeah.
in house due to privacy and security reasons. So maybe that makes them to choose SigNoz SaaS today, and maybe tomorrow they can host it back to their infra. That flexibility that most of the observability providers do not have today might be one of the reasons that these companies choose today.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, especially because in AI, the issue of privacy is still not resolved. That, hey, like if I am training an AI model, where does the data belong? And many times companies want to not send the data outside. So, in fact, if you are trying to create these models, keeping authority in house might be an interesting sort of optionality which they want to keep with them, and that SigNoz provides because you can either use a cloud product or you can self-host within your infra. So I think
Yeah.
that's a very interesting point. What else are you seeing?
Yeah, so like one of the learnings that I already discussed was like that actually came out from the customers themselves regarding the need to rotate the initial keys and an option to be able to control the data sent from different services, different teams, different deployment environments, right? So these kinds of use cases where that came directly from the customers and users, and we build it out very fast, and like they are using us that because of this, and they're the FinOps team might be happy from their company, I would say.
Yeah, I think like from my observation, as more and more bigger enterprise companies are using SigNoz, we are learning a lot more about what type of use cases are important for them. For example, the ingest card feature which we just launched, that was sort of learning from these customers and working with them to understand what problems they have and how they're trying to solve it. And essentially, like if you are in any decentralized org, you'll have a central platform team, and then you'll have multiple teams which you will sort of set up already for, and then you want to have some sort of monitoring on like what these teams are using, how much data are they sending, and also have more security controls, right? So these are be some of the use cases which I think are quite interesting as SigNoz becomes more widely used and more uh, increasingly adopted in new areas.
Right.
uh, yeah, I think the other question I had was, so till now we are, as we mentioned, we talked about some of the features getting more robust and then building the first layer of insights in the product. Give us some sense on like what can our users and open source community expect in the coming uh, launch week, right? So say in the next 2 3 months, what is the product areas where you are working on, what is the focus?
Right. So, given that we have become quite comfortable with the base layer of signals, what we have built with metrics, traces, logs, and everything of these combined, I think we are ready to build great features on top of them. Starting with like a component that we have not touched right now is around infrastructure monitoring. We had some basic dashboards, but we want and our customers want to have infrastructure monitoring as a separate section where they are able to understand their clusters, their nodes, their namespaces, their workloads, and how is each of those uh, nodes doing, the VMs doing. If there is some issue in a node, they should be able to debug it, uh, debug the issue by correlating to different parts of the product. Like if they have a problem with the service, the APM metrics would give them an idea, okay, yeah, this thing seems to be broken, but you can go and check out the logs from that machine, or you can check out the CPU usage of that machine, the memory, to figure out if there is a memory leak or not, and vice versa. Like, so going much deeper into correlations is what I am expecting our product and engineering team to focus on in the coming months. You will also see our positioning and commitment on open telemetry native getting stronger. So we will understand more nuances of open telemetry using more of the semantic conventions. We already have been doing those, some of those today. Examples can be like the exceptions tab that we have extracted from the events from the traces, the DB database calls, the exception, the external call section in our APM pages, moving from APM to traces, like these, using OPAMP for our log processing pipelines to update our collector config. So these are like a few things that we already have been doing, but like using correlations more towards empowering users to debug issues faster is, I think, what we are going to focus on the coming months. Along with the users now would be able to see the difference between a true unified observability that we have been narrating versus siloed observability that they see, like some company being just based on traces, just based on logs. So you will start seeing differences like what a unified observability tool can enhance the experience of debugging, right? So those are the, I think, like being more open telemetry native features and correlations is going to be our primary focus in the coming months. A couple of
Got it. Got it. Can you double click on that? Oh, like you mentioned non. So as you mentioned, we already have some features which are open telemetry native, and like customers use them a lot around like exceptions pages, being able to go from like DV call monitoring, etc., using the open telemetry native formats, and couple of more features which you already have. What does the future of a like open telemetry native authority tool look like versus like a non-native? Like what will be the key differences will be which people will be able to see, like maybe not today, like but maybe 2 years down the line? What does this
Yeah.
look like? Help us visualize that.
Yeah. A great question indeed. I would say, like, we have been exploring things around that too. The few of the foremost things that come to my mind is using open telemetry semantics as much as possible to generate insights upfront out of box to the users, right? So, like, a few we have been doing it already, as I told you, like the external calls, the TV calls. So what can be done more is you can identify those, and you can identify, in fact, all the third party API calls that are being generated from an application, and highlight them in a separate section altogether, like directly generated from the semantics of open telemetry, right? Using like http.url, http.route, uh, these http attributes specifically. Like, next set of insights could be out of db dot star attributes, like all these attributes based out of or showing you more context around the database calls that are being made. The next could be MSG, messaging system protocols, right? So we even want to build like deeper correlations between messaging systems. Like, the vanilla path is showing the metrics of a messaging system, having logs separately, traces separately, but being able to drill down from the metrics to see the traces exactly what caused the consumer lag of a messaging system like Kafka, and understanding, see how many consumer instances we are running, what was the how did the infrastructure metrics between that look like, right? So those are the things that more otel-native stuff will be maturing towards, including uh, the resource attributes, like how differently you treat the different resource attributes. That is a separate field in data model of open telemetry. Like, SigNoz supports better filtering in logs based on these resource attributes, actually. So we identify them, and we do some stuff to make it even faster than the other attributes, right? So these kinds of paying special attention to open telemetry resource attributes and the semantics and the like bringing out of box stuff is something I'm expecting and hoping that we will be able to do much better.
Got it. Yeah, I think that seems pretty interesting, especially as open telemetry is becoming the default in how people are choosing to instrument their apps now. I think that would certainly add a lot of value for our users. I think one sort of question and area where I would love your comment on. So we see lots of LLM observability tools which have sort of recently come up, and but you also see lots of, as you mentioned earlier, that lots of AI application, like LLM apps using SigNoz. So how do you see uh, these companies using SigNoz versus like an LLM ops tools, right? Because from my understanding, eventually all these tools are just not LLM apps, because they also run backend servers, they also run front end engine, and ultimately they would need a fully featured observability tool, right? So do you think for like just as an advice for early stage startups out there which are building LLM apps,
All right.
what makes sense more? Like, should they choose a very specific LLM observability tools which monitors a LLM, but maybe later they need to shift to a more fully featured observability tool like Signos? Or do you think like there's a value in like just moving fast and choosing a tool which solves the problem now and maybe worry about observability later?
Right. So the thinking clearly, like what capabilities the LLM tools need specifically, other than a fully featured observability tool. Like, the prime most two important things come to mind: how is the data getting collected? If the instrumentation is able to collect the right data that is relevant to an LLM observability tool, then don't need to use specific instrumentation agents. Or at best, if you're using an specific instrumentation agent, it should be open-telemetry native, right? You should not have some custom instrumentation added on top of open-telemetry to like have some LLM observability. The second thing that can be enhanced of something for an LLM specific company is what more out of box experiences you can give it to them, right? Like example tokens mean some natively important, interesting stuff for them, right? So you should be able to like we should be able to, or SigNoz or any other company should be able to give them better use cases of debugging using their own underlying semantics and knowledge base, so that they are able to debug the systems better. But overall, like there's no way of getting away from a fully featured observability tool, given that everyone still needs to run backend services. They still need to do logs. They still need to parse out those attributes. They still need to see traces and APM capabilities, right? So it's like a feature on top of an existing observability tool for me, as I can see. But yeah, so more and more out of stuff, box stuff for them, for these companies, the better for them.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting sort of framing you had there. Like LLM apps is a feature. It's not sort of a fundamentally different kind of application, right? It's just like, hey, like till now you have been building a Go app. Now you also have a say a different language or framework in which you are building app. But it's essentially something which can easily be monitored by a like an existing observability tool. Cool. I think that's pretty interesting, and thanks for sharing those insights, Ankit. Any any words or like any thoughts you have for our viewers, or like what would you like to say to them?
Yeah, so the point that I discussed earlier also, SigNoz has improved a lot with the help of the community. So keep supporting us, keep working with us, keep filing issues, keep highlighting issues in our documentation. So that's like fastest way for us to grow and finally come to a state where we can democratize observability for everyone, small teams, bigger teams, however you want to use SigNoz, choose to run it in-house, self-managed. SigNoz is managed and cloud or SaaS or whatever. We just want the best observability product out there uh, with the help of the community. That's it.
Cool, Ankit. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think uh, we also are always looking for feedback on whatever we have shipped. You like it, not like it, uh, or like any areas or improvement suggestions you have. Would love to hear your views. Just reach out to our Slack community. We are very active there, or just create an issue in GitHub or start a discussion, and we would love to chat with you. Yeah, I think that's all for now. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for joining, Ankit.
Yeah,
Have a great
yeah.
day.
Bye bye.